Hello, and welcome to example number 4 of chapter 13, the one where we're going to do a difference test. So, I have some data below about drinking tea versus not drinking tea and measuring the amount of plaque buildup on your teeth. So specifically, this was green tea. This is a study I was a part of in college where they randomly had student volunteers be selected into different groupings, and we looked at a couple different treatments. So one of the one I was a part of, and so I have data for it, was plaque buildup for drinking tea for 2 weeks and not drinking tea for 2 weeks every day. So some of the other groupings were like, oh, drinking tea versus not drinking tea, and bacteria buildup, and brushing your teeth versus not brushing your teeth, and brushing your teeth versus drinking green tea. So there's a bunch of different groupings, a bunch of different samplings. So this is the one I had information on because it was the one I was a part of. Fun times in stuff in tea. Anyway, so what we want to know is if drinking tea reduces plaque buildup. So I've kind of got this set up a little bit already. I've got my null hypotheses and my alternative down here. So the tea grouping would be your plaque measurements after 2 weeks of drinking tea, and no tea would be the plaque measurements for you not drinking tea. And so I think that the drinking tea is probably going to reduce your plaque buildup. So I start with the null hypothesis that there is no difference. Tea does nothing, aka these turn out exactly the same. And so the alternative is, oh, look, drinking tea seems to do something. Because I'm assuming this is going to be negative, which would say I think that this one is going to be smaller of the two of them. Now, let's look at our results. So, if you were doing the difference test by hand, what you would do at this moment would be make sure that you subtract these from each other and start off with and coming up the different, subtract these from each other and figure out what the difference is. So I'd take the T group for subject number 1 and subtract the no T group. And then I would come up with negative 0.06 and do that 10 times. But I'm super lazy. I'm going to let minitab do this for me. So I'm going to copy my data over to here. Oh, that was weird. Copy and then paste, and it comes in nice and normal. And then I'm going to come up with what the difference is using minitab. So I'm labeling C9 ahead of time so I know where I'm putting it. Okay, so we're going to go up to the calc menu and then select the calculator. This is not a regular 10 function calculator. It's these should have been blank. I already went through and did this once to make sure it worked okay. Ready? I'm gonna have to cut that part. Okay, so I'm hoping you notice this seems to be a little bit like your regular 10 function calculator, but it wants you to use the variables. This is actually a variable calculator, not a I want to do 1 plus 1 and make 2 calculator. So it'll do full pieces of data and allows you to manipulate your columns and rows of data. So I want to store this in C9 because that's the place I already pre-picked for it. And what I want to do is I want to take the T group and subtract the no T group. And that's it. And once you have this set up, go ahead and hit OK, and you'll notice something. Oh, look, there's my data. Woohoo! And it's looking pretty negative, so I think I'm on the right track here. Yay! So next up, I'm going to then use this to, do my testing. So although I made this difference column, you don't actually need it to do the paired test in minitab. You really only want to do this if you're planning on doing it by hand. So finding your mean, find your standard deviation, find your test statistic, coming up with your probability using the tables, and so on and so forth. But minitab already has a paired test built in that you can use. So we're going to go up to Stat, Basic Statistics, and down to the paired T. Okay, so in sample number 1 I have T, in sample number 2 I have no T, and the reason I have them in this order is because if you hit the options key, you'll notice it always does sample 1 minus sample 2, so make sure you have that lined up with what you want with your two that you're comparing, either a before and an after, or so on and so forth. Double check to make sure your alternative hypothesis is what you would think. My difference, I think it's actually going to be smaller because I think it's going to be negative because I think the T group is going to have less plaque than the no T group. We're going to go ahead and hit OK, and then hit OK again. And we get a super tiny, tiny, tiny p-value. It appears there is a difference between these two, and T seems to have an effect on your plaque, which is kind of fun, I guess, depending on what you feel about T. I do remember that it actually had a bigger impact on the bacteria buildup in your mouth than it did on your plaque. Notice that the mean difference estimate is kind of super small, so it's probably not enough for you to be able to detect the difference physically as much as it would be statistically. But hey, green tea is good for your mouth, and oolong is good for your skin, and now you know stuff about tea that's fun. Yeah. Anyway, so that's it. Bye.